At the end of 2023, Netflix released the live-action adaptation, YUYU HAKUSHO. I wonder if you watched this large-scale live-action cosplay drama?
NANI?
The original work is Yoshihiro Togashi's manga Yu Yu Hakusho, which began serialization in 1990 and was adapted into a TV anime in 1992, quickly achieving immense popularity. And, of course, with that level of popularity, game adaptations were inevitable. In this episode, let's talk about the classic title on the Mega Drive, YUYU HAKUSHO Makio Toitsuzan.
YUYU HAKUSHO!
This game is a versus fighting title based on Togashi's hit manga, developed by Treasure, the same company behind Gunstar Heroes. Supporting up to 4 players battling on the same screen, it is considered one of the pioneering works of multiplayer fighting games and laid the foundation for later titles such as Guardian Heroes and Bleach DS. The game was released late in the Mega Drive's life cycle on September 30th, 1994. Compared to YUYU HAKUSHO Gaiden, which came out in January of the same year, Makio Toitsuzan was far superior in terms of genre choice and audio-visual presentation. At that time, fighting games were in their golden age. Even though it launched on the Mega Drive, which had a smaller market share in Japan compared to the Super Famicom, Treasure didn't compromise on quality, instead creating a highly polished title. Meanwhile, Namco's YUYU HAKUSHO 2, fighting chapter for the SFC/SNES, released around the same period, felt rather mediocre by comparison. The game used a large 24 megabit ROM. Since it was adapted from the anime, the character animations were drawn by professional animators specifically hired for the project, ensuring smooth and detailed movement. However, because the animators didn't take storage limitations into account while drawing, compressing all these frames into the limited ROM became a major headache for project lead HAN. This may also explain why the character sprites in the game appear relatively small. Although the Mega Drive couldn't display as many colors as the SFC, Treasure's clever use of palettes faithfully reproduced the anime's character designs. When characters switched between battle planes, the game simulated a scaling effect through software, and the transitions felt so natural that players hardly noticed anything amiss. The playable characters in the game include Yusuke Urameshi, Kazuma Kuwabara, Kurama, Hai, Genkai, Chu, Jin, Elder Toguro, Younger Toguro, Itsuki, and Sunsui. A total of 11 characters. While the roster may seem small by today's standards, the actual game content is in no way lacking. In terms of music, aside from 2 tracks taken directly from the anime, all others are original compositions. These not only capture the atmosphere of the source material, but also carry Treasure's distinctive musical style. An official soundtrack CD was even released around the same time. Since this was on the Mega Drive, the voice quality was somewhat rough and raspy. Even so, the game still featured the original anime voice actors. For players in Japan, hearing the same voices as in the anime when characters unleashed their special moves must have been a moving experience. Unfortunately, the game did not include a story mode, which was a bit of a letdown for fans who particularly loved the original plot. As a fighting game, Makio Toitsuzan retained all the core elements of the genre while also adding many unique features. First, it supported 4-player simultaneous battles, something very rare for fighting games at the time. In addition, it introduced a dual-plane system. Players could move between planes depending on the situation. To prevent players from abusing the system to simply run away and disrupt the game's pacing, movement speed was slowed when switching to a plane with no opponents, and attacks couldn't be performed during the transition. Likely to better suit multiplayer battles, guarding was assigned to its own button. The other 2 buttons were used for light and heavy attacks. With simple directional inputs, players could perform a wide variety of moves and combos. Other mechanics included move clashes, dashes, backsteps, and double jumps, which boosted both speed and excitement. Similar to Art of Fighting, special moves consumed spirit energy to activate. When spirit energy ran low, it could be recharged by holding down the attack button and could also be replenished through combos. Taunting was not just cosmetic either. Performing it would actually decrease the opponent's spirit energy. Some ranged special moves could be charged by holding the button after the input command. Charging enhanced their power, hit properties, and priority in clashes. Charging could be cancelled with a guard, and players could then either release the move at its current charge or continue charging. At maximum charge, the attack's hitbox could even become larger than the character itself. By absorbing the strengths of successful titles and combining them in creative ways, this game managed to stand out during an era when nearly every major company was releasing fighting games. For example, its focus on combos and the inclusion of a visible combo counter, now standard features in modern fighting games, were forward-thinking at the time. Thanks to its simple controls and ease of play, even beginners could join the fight after just a bit of practice. Among the characters, Hai's special move, Black Dragon Unholy Fire, could be absorbed to increase its damage, a faithful nod to the original manga that players greatly enjoyed. Interestingly, in 1999, the Brazilian game publisher Tectoy released a localized Brazilian version. This version only localized the text while retaining the Japanese voices, though some character names, such as the Toguro brothers, were changed. Apart from the Japanese version, the Brazilian release was the only other edition of the game. No North American version was made, likely because YUYU HAKUSHO was still relatively unknown in the US at the time. Despite being such an outstanding title, Famitsu gave the game a surprisingly low score upon release. Fortunately, years later the game's true quality was reevaluated, and Famitsu even apologized for its harsh review. Because of its release timing and poor initial media reception, the game's production run was limited. Now that it has regained its reputation, second-hand copies fetch very high prices. This nearly 30-year delayed recognition is both heartening and bittersweet, especially when thinking of the original development team. In fact, the game was originally planned as an original multiplayer fighting title called Senju Takakuta Axion. At Sega's suggestion, however, it was transformed into a YUYU HAKUSHO adaptation. Development of Senju Takakuta was led by Chan, mentioned earlier, who is also a character designer for many treasure titles. In his self-published Dojinshi Rakugakidyo, he shared character design drafts and ideas for Senju Takakuta Axion, while also venting his frustrations. He even revealed that after Gunstar Heroes, the original plan was to make a side-scrolling action game, but the combat elements were split off and turned into the YUYU HAKUSHO fighting game under Sega's orders. From the design sketches, it's clear that Kikuchi poured tremendous effort into the project, creating many distinct and imaginative characters. For example, he designed a girl named Neo, conceived as a lowly character, something he noted had never appeared in fighting games at the time. However, he later discovered that Samurai Showdown featured Nakaruru. What he thought was a unique idea had already appeared in another company's game. To make matters worse, he later realized some of Neo's moves resembled those of Hanzo Hattori from Samurai Showdown. For a designer, experiencing this kind of creative overlap must have been incredibly frustrating. From Tetsuhiko Kikuchi's design sketches, we can also see that his female characters were drawn with very modest outfits, showing little skin. He once stated that he wasn't fond of designing overly revealing female characters. Although Senju Takakuta Axion was ultimately cancelled, its concepts and elements later became the foundation for Guardian Heroes. Today, Treasure is often seen as a company that mostly recycles its old works. Like many others, I feel somewhat disappointed with their reliance on past successes. I still hope that, within my lifetime, we'll get to see brand new titles or sequels to their classic IPs, true treasures that can still surprise us. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm Wandered Neo. See you next time.